Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and we are studying Chapter 6 on Advanced Genetics from BJU Biology's 4th edition. Today, from Section 6A, Chromosomal and Genetic Changes, we're going to talk about Section 6.2 on mutations. And this is usually a topic we're pretty fascinated with because it's been romanticized a bit by characters like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So our objectives today will be to define mutation, compare and contrast the changes within a chromosome and changes within a gene, and discuss the differences between somatic and germ cell mutations. So what is a mutation? A mutation is a random change in a DNA molecule. There are two main types of mutations. They are a chromosomal mutation, which is the rearrangement of genes on a chromosome due to chromosome breaking, and a gene mutation. This is altering the sequence of DNA bases of a single gene. And sometimes these mutations are lethal, which means that they cause death of an organism, but not always. So types of chromosomal mutations are translocation. This is the transfer of a chromosome segment to a non-homologous chromosome. So it would be kind of like yarn. I have two colors of yarn here. They each represent a different chromosome. But a translocation would be if I cut a little piece off of one piece of yarn and attached it to the other piece of yarn. That would be a translocation. It involves the exchange of genes on the ends of non-homologous chromosomes. And this is an important note. It is not crossing over because crossing over is the exchange of genetic material between homologous chromosomes during meiosis and is not a form of translocation and is not a mutation. It's a mutation when they're not homologous chromosomes. There's also deletion, and I have the scissors here because scissors cut things off. And a deletion is a mutation involving the loss of a segment of a chromosome during replication. So it's as if it just got snipped off and completely lost. This is when a chromosome segment breaks off but does not reattach. And then there is inversion. And you see this picture in the background where it's upside down. This is a chromosomal mutation in which genes break off a section of DNA and reattach, but in the opposite order. So they flip, just like the picture here. The segment breaks off and reattaches at the same position. So it doesn't go to a different chromosome. It isn't lost. It reattaches in the same place. And the segment rotates 180 degrees. The results are usually not as serious as other changes within the chromosome, so probably would not be lethal. Some of the others may actually be lethal. Now, gene mutations. So that was with chromosomes. This is with a gene, just a segment of the chromosome. We generally call these point mutations, and this is a gene mutation involving only one or a few nucleotides. So this might be a change in the order of one nucleotide in a section of a DNA molecule. So types of gene mutations. The first is a substitution. We see the substitutes on the bench in the background here. This is when a nucleotide in the DNA sequence is removed and replaced with a different nucleotide, or when two nucleotides are inverted. So it's like sending a substitute into a game, and it can make a difference. An example is sickle cell anemia, where there is just one nucleotide that is switched. Adenosine is for thymine. So thymine is replaced by adenosine, and it causes sickle cell anemia, a serious disease in which an individual with this, when they're in low oxygen, their red blood cells, instead of being nice and plump like donuts, they actually form kind of sickle shaped, like half moons that are jagged and get stuck, and it's very painful disease. So just one not an amino acid, one nucleotide changes a protein and causes a disease. There's also nucleotide addition. This is when an extra nucleotide is placed in the DNA sequence, kind of like this necklace. It looks kind of odd and out of shape. We have all green and there's just this random purple. This causes a frame shift. And a frame shift is a DNA mutation in which a nucleotide or nucleotides other than the three in number are added to or taken from the chains so that subsequent codons are read incorrectly. So it changes probably all of the amino acids after that shift. We talked about how to code amino acids, and it just shifts everything over and makes it so that you're not even making that protein anymore. Then there is a nucleotide deletion. A nucleotide is removed from the DNA sequence. This also causes a frame shift. So, like in a bracelet or necklace, you might have a pattern going on, and then you remove a bead and you don't have that same pattern going on anymore. It causes a frame shift. And again, you're coding for a completely different protein. It's not even coding for the protein anymore. So, what are the biological effects of these mutations? There could be death, but a lot of times these are called by mutagens, and this is a substance that induces mutation, kind of like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I believe the story is they got into toxic waste, and that's a mutagen, and so it caused a mutation in them. Um, some it's a mutagen is anything that causes a mutation to occur. These can be chemicals, UV radiation that causes skin cancer, X-rays, etc. So we can have two types of mutations, really, in our cells. There can be a somatic mutation. This is a mutation that affects only body cells, not gametes. And I have cigarettes in the background because cigarette smoke, the chemicals in it are mutagens that cause lung cancer. It affects only individual cells and tissues and is usually not severe since the body normally loses and reproduces individual cells. So that's why if a person quits smoking, they're less likely to develop lung cancer because your body actually, the immune system will take care of those cells that have mutated and get rid of them. However, if you continue to smoke and you're a heavy smoker, the body cannot continue to do that as effectively, especially as we age. This usually produces an off protein, which either kills the cell or has no effect on the cell. So a lot of times, um, there's not too many repercussions from this. There are mistakes made all the time in our cells, but like I said, they either just die or they're taken care of by our immune system. These results rarely have any major effect on a multicellular organism unless there is, in the case of cancer, where it becomes out of control because the stop signal, remember at the end of proteins, there's that stop signal we talked about in the DNA chain. If that gets deleted and it gets out of control, then we can develop cancer. And these are not passed on to the next generation. So sometimes there are certain cancers that people are more susceptible due to their genes, but generally something like lung cancer, you may be more susceptible, you may be less susceptible, but it's not if your parents had lung cancer, you will have it. No, usually there's some other factor such as smoking that's involved. There are also germ mutations. A germ mutation is a mutation that affects the gamete producing cells. So these are the sex cells, the sperm and egg. This affects every cell in the new individual. So it does not affect the parent, it affects the offspring. And it is a change in a characteristic that can be passed on naturally to future generations. So this is one that is passed on. And it usually has a greater effect on the new individual than it does on the multicellular organism in which the mutation initially occurs. Now, I have this warning X-ray radiation sign in the background. This is the reason when you're going for X-rays that they put a lead vest over you, over your reproductive organs. It's so that they will not cause a mutation in the sex cells that you produce so that you will not have a mutation in your offspring. Also, there are generally also warnings that if you are pregnant to let the x-ray technician know, and this is so they can take extra precautions so that they don't produce a somatic mutation in the child that you are carrying. Okay. So our objectives were to define mutation, compare and contrast the changes within a chromosome and changes in a gene, because there are chromosomal changes, there are gene changes, and also discuss the difference between somatic and germ cell mutations. Remember, somatic is the regular cells in your body, affects the individual that the change takes place in, and germ cell mutations are the sex cells, sperm and egg, and those can be passed on to the next generation. Don't forget your 5 questions in your notes and keep watching to answer the questions at the end.